Let me just, oh, you have to let me share. Sorry. I'll show you. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Of course.
Perfect. All right. So let me just allow that and gonna launch Photoshop. All right. So good to see you guys. Actually, I think YouTube's at about 405,000 now, but that's all
Nice.
right. But the other thing that she didn't mention is I'm the founder of PhotoshopCafe.com, which is probably where I spend the majority of my time. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at some workflows in Photoshop today. And some of the things I really want to focus on is combining images. And we're going to show how to match, color and light in different ways. But sometimes people run into problems when they're trying to combine images. And I want to like kind of address that when we're going to be talking about, like different color profiles and different things like that. So why don't we start by, let's just do something really simple. I'm going to show you two ways to blend the colors. We're going to open this up and I'm going to open this one up. I'm going to show you a couple of methods and then we'll get into some of the more nitty gritty stuff. Okay, so sometimes when you combine photos, you take a photo and you bring it in, and in this case, I'm not really too worried about the shadows, or even though I sort of made some. But the colors don't match. So we've got the picture, and it's like obviously, it's warmer, it's a sunset kind of going on in the background. Whereas my model here, I photographed her in the studio, at about, just daylight balanced. So you can see the colors are a little bit different. But one of the first things I did here is I'll just show you. Just kind of, it is a little bit of a giveaway on the guitar when I tell you. Um, but sometimes if you're looking at the light direction and you have a particular image, now, if you have a background image and then you're photographing the model later on, it's very easy to match the lighting. You could even match lighting temperature by using gels and different things like that, lighting direction. It's quite easy. But sometimes when you already have an existing photograph and you have an existing background and you have to combine those, and a lot of graphic designers, corporate, people have to do that. Freelancers, sometimes the client says, I want you to put this together. So if we look at this, you can see the light direction is coming from the left-hand side. You can see there's the shadows are kind of falling. You can tell by the mountains. It's very obvious. But if we look on here, you can see the lighting. You see the highlights on the other side, the highlights here. So the light is coming from the wrong direction. So sometimes you can just right click and then just flip horizontal is a good place to start. Now, because I'm using a guitar, some people might say, hey, that's left-handed guitar. I might have to do some stuff with the Ibanez logo, different things like that. But this is just really just an example so she can show you how to blend the colors. So, just pay attention to that. Sometimes if it's just a person and you flip them, no big deal. In fact, when you look at pictures of yourself on your phone, when you look at yourself in the mirror, you're actually looking at yourself flipped anyway. So most people are actually used to seeing themselves reversed, and very few people see themselves actually the right way around until they look at photos of themselves and they wonder, why do I look different in photos? Anyway, we're going a little bit beyond that. So why don't I show you a couple of different ways of doing it? Now, one of them is using the old AI, not the new AI. So as it's Firefly. A lot of Adobe's using that. But before Firefly was Sensei. And Sensei was not generative AI, but it was just using AI in order to do things, manipulate tone and color. Um, so this is where we see the neural filters. So if I go into this particular one and then we choose filter, and then we go down to the neural filters, these neural filters are all using Sensei. So when we see harmonization, and you might ask, well, is that the same as harmonize? Does that mean that harmonize is going away? No, it's completely different. And I'll show harmonize in a moment, but it has absolutely nothing to do with it. But harmonization it's been here for several years now. And what that does is it enables us to take that layer here and match the color with the background. So we're going to click on harmonization. We're going to turn it on and notice nothing happens. And what it's doing is it wants me to select a layer. We are working on here. Let me just cancel and just show you. Notice I've selected the layer here. That's the layer of the woman. So that's what we want to change. And let's go back to the filter gallery again, not the filter gallery, the neural filters. So we know where this is the active layer. That's what's going to be changed. So when we choose on harmonization, see, it says the output will be to the current layer, or we could create a new layer, which we will. All right. So when we're looking at it here, well, we need a layer to go against it. So when we go on select a layer, it shows all the other layers in the stack. I have two other layers, and one of them is one with the shadow in it, and this is the one with the background. So I want to use the background, and notice as soon as I click on that, maybe you missed it. If we click here, we can see the original. Click there. Notice it takes the colors in the background, matches it, and does a lot of the work for you. Now, the thing about AI is you don't have a ton of control over it. We can make adjustments here to the different tones, the different colors, and we can also adjust the saturation and brightness if it's too saturated. In this case, it might be we could take it down a little bit. And the strength. So the strength is just going to be the amount. If I turn it up, it's going to increase the whole effect. If I turn it down, it's going to decrease it. So you can kind of balance the original with the effect. And for most part, this works quite well. So we're going to output it to a new layer. And we can say, okay, here we were before, here we are after, definitely a better match. Now, there's another way we can do this. And this is when we do it 100% manual. So when we want to match the colors 100% manually, and as you can see here, this is just, once again, this is a background. I shot this in Seattle, has a really interesting Seattle kind of an atmosphere. And then once again, shot in the studio. You can see when I show you the background and I show you the model, it's very obvious that she doesn't match. All right, so what we're going to do is, this is the one, the fallback that just always works when you get difficult images. It has some pretty good features. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the adjustments, and then we're going to choose match color. But before I do, what I want to do is I'm just going to duplicate that background so we can preserve the background, because this does not work as an adjustment layer. Most adjustments in Photoshop are also available as adjustment layers. This is not available as an adjustment layer. So we're going to choose adjustment here, and then we're going to choose match color. All right. So generally speaking, I would turn this to a smart object. I forget because, I'm live right now. I would just check it myself. But I don't believe this one works on a smart object. It might, but I don't think so. So what we're going to do is under source. I love this though, because what it can do is when you have a whole ton of different images open, it can see all the documents. So you can see this is the one with match color with a space. The previous example was match color together. I could go in here and I could literally look at this. See how it's seeing the images? So here I am, I'm matching it to the background. Obviously, it looks terrible right now, but I'm just showing the capabilities of this. Every document that you have open, you can go into that document and you can go into any layer in there. Awesome. Okay, so let's go to the one we're working on, match color. Great. And now we're seeing the background. See the background there? If we choose a background copy, that would just be the original of her. So there's the background. Okay, still doesn't look great. But this is where these adjustments come in. Okay, obviously it's too bright, so we can take that luminance down. The color intensity is, hey, how saturated or unsaturated do we want to go? So you can adjust that. And then fade is kind of where the magic happens. I usually take fade all the way down to 0. Oh, let me just match this the best I can first. Let's try and get the color intensity a little bit better. I'm saying about there. And then you take fade down and just start to creep it up a little bit until it starts to adjust the model. And then you can start to get a better adjustment. So if we look at this one before and after, very difficult one to work on, but as you can see, not impossible. All right, so the other one I do want to show you before I get into something else is I want to show you the new one, which is harmonized. This one is only inside of Photoshop beta. So this is the Photoshop public beta, which is available for everybody. If you want it, just go under your Creative Cloud account, go under apps, and then you'll see beta in there up here. Let me just drag this out. Well, where's beta? It's supposed to be there.
I think they're always changing, so it might be under pre-release
Yeah,
now.
they're always changing. Maybe it's under there, but
Pre-release, maybe.
possibly. But I'm not going to click on it because I'm in some other pre-releases that I can't talk about because of
Sure.
NDA. But if you go in here and you'll see it, and you'll see the Photoshop beta, it'll be in there, and then you can just download it. So I'm not going to click on there right now. But the cool thing about it is, notice, like I say, people say, I don't want to use the beta. It's buggy. I don't like it. Well, look at this. Check this out. Look, I have Photoshop running right now, and I have Photoshop beta running at the same time. So you can run them simultaneously, completely independent from each other. And this is a good place to go out and try some of the new features in here. And the feature I want to talk about is harmonize. You might have seen it. I'm going to copy this to a new layer just to protect it. In fact, actually, I don't need to, but that's actually I don't need to because it will work on a new layer. So here we go. So I'm going to click on harmonize with the top layer. As you can see here, we've got a couple of things. Let's just move them to position first. So we're going to pop them down here. Notice nothing matches. There's no shadow. They look like they're just stuck in there. So this is in a public beta right now, and the resolution is quite low at the moment too. So we're going to click on harmonize, but I'm going to show you a trick to get around some of that resolution in a second. And it might take a moment for this to happen because it's going up to the cloud. And obviously we're doing streaming at the same time. So that's also going to slow down the bandwidth. Now I have 2 gig fiber. So if you have slower internet, it might take a little longer. But if we look at this, before, after, look at that. Added the shadows,
Nice.
matched the color, lighting direction, everything. So we get 3 variations. So there's a second variation. There's the third variation. I think I like the third variation the best. So let's zoom in on it and have a look. So we can see it's pretty good. But notice that the resolution you can see around his legs, the resolution is low. And let me show you why. The reason the resolution is low is when it generates, what it does is it generates the entire image. So this entire image is regenerated, and then it adds a mask, and that blends it into the background. So the problem is you're taking that 1024 resolution that we have, and you're stretching it out across this entire image. So let me show you a little hack. Let's go back here, and maybe we want to do this again. So this is what I do to get more resolution or more out of my resolution. So I've hidden the harmonized layer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a selection, and I'm going to make this selection around a smaller area. Notice what I'm doing though, is I'm getting enough room for it to see the environment. I'm letting it see that the shadows in the image, because this is going to give it a hint of the lighting direction that's in the background. We can see we've got the main colors in here. We've picked up some of the sand and some of the neutral areas. I say neutral because they're not really 100% neutral, but this is letting it know, but I'm also giving it enough space to generate the shadow at the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit the background, and I'm going to hit Control or Command J. Let me hide the background so I can show you what I've done. What I've done is I've made a little snippet. And then I'm going to take these two together. I'm going to right click and I'm going to pop them into a smart object. Now it's still going to look the same if we look at the background. Instead of being separate layers, now they're a smart object. So quite chuffed of myself coming up with this workaround, because one of the things I realize is when you create a smart object, what happens is a smart object actually can be opened as a PSB, as a separate document. If you look under my document window right now, there's one open. If I double click on the smart object, look, the contents of the smart object here, both the layers are here, but look, now it's working because I made that selection from the background. We now have a smaller image. So now I'm going to take all that resolution and allow it to percolate in the smallest space, which means that we're going to optimize it. So let's grab the top. We're going to choose harmonize once again. This is generating. And the reason I started with showing you the other methods is because when harmonization and all of these fail, you always want to fall back to the traditional tools, because those you can always make them work. All right, so if we look at this, here we were before, here we are after, looking a lot better. Let's look at a couple of variations. Ooh, look at that one. It's even got a shadow coming on her hat. Look at that. Looks nice. Shadow on the ground looks better. The middle layer doesn't do anything anymore because it's hidden by this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close this out, and it's going to ask me if I want to save it. I'm going to say yes, go to the other one, and it's going to update. So if we look at it, there's a harmonized layer. All right, let's see why I did all that effort, because we're going to look. Here's the harmonize that we created. Double click on the magnifying glass, takes us to 100%. Maybe I'll go even closer. So remember, these legs were just looking really bad, right? So let's look at the one after I did the smart object. Boom, look at that. Look how much cleaner that is. Much, much better. The quality of your hat, harmonized by itself, soft, blurry. Like, it's not that good. But then when I put it on a smart object, optimizing the resolution, much better result. And where it really shows, if you look at the ground, let's hide the background. Look at that shadow. It's blocky. Look at it. Low resolution, horrible. And then here's the harmonized. Once I put it into the smart object, beautiful and smooth. And this is looking at 300%. So when you're going back to 100%, yeah, now we're able to use it and get a much better result than we were before. All right, so now I'm going to jump out of the beta. I'm going to go back to the regular Photoshop. And let's talk about something that is quite interesting. I'm just going to close these out. I don't need these. Let me show you a problem that a lot of people run into. So I'm just going to choose File, Open, and I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to open 2 images. All right, so here we go. We'll go to Train, shot that in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and then same model, Colin Studio Shot. Okay, so how many people have had this happen and they don't know why? Watch this. I'm going to combine the 2 images by choosing the Move tool, and I'm going to drag this up into the tab. This is the image I want to go into. Notice that my cursor is not black, it's white. That means it's loaded with something. I'm going to move it into the middle, hold down the Shift key, that will center it, and then release. Okay, it's telling me something. No one ever reads these. You just, I don't know, let's just go. Oh, what happened? If we look at this, see the colors? Now the colors are completely different, washed out. People run into this problem all the time, and they don't know why it's happening. And I'll tell you why it's happening, because what's happening is, even though both of these images are in RGB, there's a different profile attached to it. And this is where, I'm talking about color and color matching, and why it's so important to have a calibrated monitor, because you need, if you don't have a calibrated monitor, you don't know what you're looking at, and you don't know, you're trying to match your colors, but it's a moving target. So you want to have a reliable source that hey, this is accurate color. I do know this is accurate because I'm working on my BenQ SW321C, and this has been calibrated. In fact, I used the Calibrite display. You might have seen these. You put these over your monitor. You run the calibration software. They have Palette Master here in the BenQs, which is this one here. You run that and you calibrate your monitor. All right, so I know that the colors are accurate, but the colors are accurate on here too. So why do they look funky when I mix them together? Why is this changing? Okay, so if you go down the bottom and we look here inside of Photoshop, we've got different settings. And one of those settings is document profile. If we look at this, it's a 16 BPC Pro Photo RGB. So this is telling me it's a 16-bit per channel. So if we go up onto the image mode, you'll see it's 16 bits per channel. So when you're shooting raw files, this is what you're going to get. A JPEG is never going to be 16. It's going to be 8, because a JPEG cannot hold 16-bit color. So this is, it's a TIFF or a PSD, which has come from shooting raw. So, okay, so I've got a good color depth there. But look at this one, it's 8. It also says up here 16. Oh, I'm trying to drop a 16-bit file into an 8-bit file. Ew. Okay. So this is the first problem. Okay. So now it comes down to one thing. If this is going to be our image, do we want to drop everything down to the lowest common denominator so everything matches? That is definitely a good possibility because this is going to be the canvas that we're going to be painting on. But maybe we don't want to lose the bit depth, which the bit depth gives us more colors, which means when we make adjustments, we don't get banding. Okay, so maybe I don't want to lose that on the model. Okay, so why don't I change this? So I'm going to go up and I'm going to choose image adjustments mode 16-bit. Okay, this is now 16-bit image. Now let me make something clear. This did not miraculously suddenly turn this. Yes, it's a 16-bit space, and this image is now spread upon the 16-bit space, but it didn't suddenly give it more dynamic range. It didn't suddenly give it more colors. Whatever was in that image has already been lost, right? So it was dropped down to an 8-bit. And don't get me wrong, you can do a lot of stuff in 8-bit, and I work in 8-bit a lot. It's fine. But maybe we don't want to lose what's here. So what I've done now is I've created a container which is larger. The colors on this train are not going to change, but I can maintain the full bit depth of our model. Okay, so what happens now if we drag it in here? Still the colors go. We're not getting that warning anymore, right? That 8-bit, that mismatch warning is gone because now they're both 16-bit, but we're still losing our colors. Why are the colors changing? Well, let's have a look at the second part. If we go down here, we can see this is in Pro Photo. So there's RGB, which is red, green, blue, right? So we are working in an RGB color space, meaning that those three colors are creating what we're looking at. But there's different profiles within there. And those different profiles have what's known as a gamut. A gamut is the way those colors are mapped or how many colors are supported. A Pro Photo RGB is a very, very large color space that can contain a lot of colors. Not everyone works in there, and sometimes we don't want to. There's three big ones that we are going to be working in most of the time, and P3 was probably one I would mention too. But the main ones that photographers are using today are ProPhoto, Adobe RGB, and sRGB. So ProPhoto has the biggest color gamut, but there's colors on here that cannot be displayed on my monitor. So if I'm printing it, there could be colors here that I don't see. And now we could go backwards and forwards. There's a whole dispute. Should I use ProPhoto Color or should I use Adobe RGB? So if I'm printing, and I have an Epson P800 behind me here, I'm probably going to be working in Adobe RGB. And part of the reason for that too is my monitor here is 99% Adobe RGB. So I can see those colors and I know I can print them. Now, sRGB is the lowest common denominator out of common color spaces that we use. And sRGB is what you see on the internet. It's digital. So if you're performing work for digital, it's good. It doesn't show as many colors, but what it does is it's very consistent. It kind of breaks it down, but it has colors. There's 216 web-safe colors you've probably heard of. Obviously, it's not dropping it down to 216. It's going to give you more colors than that, but it is going to shift towards those 216. So you're going to have a more consistent display across screens, across all screens when you're doing that. Now, if you're talking about mobile phones and different things like that, and you're designing for that, you might use P3. But all right, so enough technicality. Let's see what's happening. So this is Pro Photo RGB. Let's have a look at this one. What have we got in here? So let's have a look. Document profile. Oh, this is just untagged RGB. Untagged means that it hasn't been assigned a color profile. Oh, great. We can assign one. So if we go up here and we can choose edit, and I want to assign a color profile, I've got two settings that don't worry about all the other settings right now. The two we're going to be looking at to solve this problem is assign profile and convert to profile. Now, some people they just go to the color settings and they go in and they just turn off the color management. They just turn all these off. You don't want to do that. Trust me. So what we want to do is we are going to assign a profile because it doesn't have one. So we're going to choose to assign it. Now, here's the option, don't color manage this document, which is what it was at before. That's like the lazy person's way of getting around these dialogues. But the problem is you're not working with accurate color. So we've got some choices. We could change it to working RGB, and you'll see it shifted a little bit. Or we could go to profile, which just means that we can choose what we want. So if we go here, notice if we want to go to Pro Photo, oh boy, that's going to shift the colors. It's not going to look good. No. But we could go to Adobe RGB, we'll be fine. So why don't we just go, or we could, there's notice as we switch to sRGB, we're losing colors.
Yeah.
So why don't we, for now, we're just going to go with the working Adobe RGB. Click OK. Now, once again, if we take this and we drag this in, notice now, how come it looks good? Because this is Pro Photo, the other one isn't. That's because we're working in a different color space. Now we have some kind of color management there. Even though we just took a Pro Photo RGB and we dropped it into an Adobe RGB document, it didn't shift the colors very much. And that's because now we're working in a color managed environment. But let me show you something else that's interesting. So if we go under here and we choose the edit, and now rather than assign profile, we're going to do convert to profile. And so we were working in Adobe RGB. That was what we have. But notice, if I'm previewing, look at this. It's not changing the colors anymore. So this is where we're doing the convert to profile. So if you want to keep it in a Pro Photo and you don't want to change your original and you want it to match, it's a two-step process. The first one is to get it color managed with something that looks the same. Once you've got that, now we can change the profile, because all we're doing is we're just changing the canvas. I can change this to Pro Photo RGB now if I want, and it looks the same. And I can grab my image, I can drag it in, drop it in, and everything's fine, because now we're working in a Pro Photo RGB environment. And that's a good way for making the adjustments. We're not going to lose any colors. We're not going to lose anything from our original image, and they're going to match. But say you wanted to work in the other one, if you wanted to work in Adobe RGB, you could go under here, you could convert to profile. Let's change this to Adobe RGB. No problem. Let's go here, edit. And then we're going to change this one. If we do assign profile, it's going to mess up the colors. But if we do convert profile, say, yeah, let's work in Adobe RGB. No problem. It's Adobe RGB, drag it in here, and now it's going to match. So to simplify that, if you have untagged colors or you've turned off color management, you saw what happened. The colors can shift significantly when you combine documents or different layers together. Well, when you combine different documents, the colors are going to shift. So what I was showing you there, that's a reason to work in a color managed environment. Because now when we do this, I can bring in different layers and I can bring in different documents, and it's not going to shift their colors. Very, very important. So I don't know if you ever had that problem before where your colors didn't match and it shifted them. That's why. And now you know why. Okay, so let me just do one other fun technique before I pass this to Andrew. I'm just going to show you one more creative technique quickly, and then we'll look at some Lightroom stuff. So hopefully this was helpful. But maybe before I continue, does anyone have any? Was there any questions that came in right there, Asha?
No, I think we are good so far. We don't have any questions.
Okay, good, good. All right, so this is, maybe a little bit more technical than some of the things I normally teach, but hopefully that's people find that useful. And what I'm going to do here is we're going to do something just for fun. I want to show shifting colors. I want to show you something really interesting. So this is not so much a technical color thing as this is a visual color thing I'm going to show you now. So we've got two images. We've got a person with a white shirt and a black shirt. And what if we want to change white to color and we want to change black to color? In fact, I'm going to make it really difficult. I'm going to get exactly the same color on both these shirts. But here's a little trick too for upsizing. I'm going to show you one that works really well as filter, because this is not a large image. And if we go to the neural filters, a lot of people are not aware of this. There's another one called super zoom. And if I turn on super zoom, I'm going to double the size of this. So all I did, super zoom, turn it on, and new layer. Let's just output new document. I'm going to click OK. And look at this. I have now created an image that's 100% with higher resolution. And there are some different things we've been looking at for image upsizing. This one still works extremely well. If we look at the before and after, you can see, hey, we up-res that. That looks great. Okay, so let's talk about changing the color of the shirts. Generally speaking, when you want to change color, you go to adjust colors, right? And it works well. It picks up the 6 prominent colors in the image. The problem is black and white are not included. We can use an eyedropper to activate the eyedropper. Just choose any color. And if you click for the eyedropper, notice you can select any color within this image. See that? But if we go to black, okay, that's pretty good. Or if we go to white, let's try this again. Grab the eyedropper. Okay. Now, what happens if I try to change black or white? If I change the hue, notice we get very little movement in the white. Let's change this to black. Grab that again. Grab the eyedropper. We're going to choose black. And we can change the hue. Very, very little movement. And this is a problem that people run into. Let me show you the solution. It's really quick. It's going to take a couple of minutes, and then I'll pass it over. All right. So what we want to do is, first of all, I want to isolate them because I'm not going to do it by color. I'm going to choose the object selection tool, and we're going to use rectangle. We're going to start on white. This is an AI-powered selection, so just make a rough selection where it understands, yeah, I want the white shirt. Yep, that's what we want. Control J, Command J, copy it to new layer. We've got the white shirt. Let's grab the black shirt. Same thing. All you got to do is tell it the area you want to select, and Shift key will add it. Control J. Now we've got the black shirt. So we've got black and a white shirt. Okay, so what we want to do is turn both of these into color. So we're going to start with the white. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the adjustment layer. I'm going to choose hue saturation. I'm just going to hold down the Option key, clip it so it's only affecting this layer. Okay, so as we know, the hue is changing it a little bit, but not much. Here is the secret a lot of people don't know. And I've seen people use HSL or hue saturation lightness, and they use it to lighten and darken their images. Please do not do that. This lightness does not work well when you want to lighten and darken your images. Use curves or use levels,
right?
Or exposure even. What lightness does is it enables me to change this white to a shade of gray. So first of all, I'm going to choose colorize. So this is going to give some color, but once again, it's only going to change the shadowy area. It's not enough because it can't change white. Because the pure white, you're changing the hue of it. Hue is the color itself. Saturation is how much of the color. And even if I turn the saturation all the way up, you're going to get a little bit more, but look, it's still washed out. And this is where people go. They're trying to change the color. And this is kind of what they're working with. I've seen it so many times. The key is lightness. Let's take that white and change it to a gray. And look at this. Now you can put in good, solid color. And this is literally why the lightness exists. So when we do this, we can change the saturation, we can change the hue, and you can dial in literally any color you want. So just for fun, why don't we choose this kind of teal color? And the reason I'm going to choose the teal color is to show you how well this works. We're going to make this black exactly the same color. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to hide these. Let's go back in, and this time we're going to do the same thing. Hue saturation adjustment layer. And we just want to clip it. You can use this button here too. See how that just puts it there? Just means it's going to affect that layer and nothing else. Same thing, colorize. You can get a little color, but it's not good, right? People have done this. But if you take the black and then you force it to a gray, and if I turn off the colorize and I turn the saturation down, you would see that it's gray underneath. But this enables us to literally dial in any color we want. Okay, so if I want to match the two colors, this is exactly how I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to the top layer and notice the hue is 183, saturation 77. 183, 77. Watch this. Go to the other one. 183, 77. Boom. And the only thing I need to do now is adjust the lightness, and look at that. Boom. Both exactly the same color now. One started as black, one started as white. So this recolorizing just gives you so much power. And you can literally, by using the lightness and the saturation, and you could take any color, change it to any other color. You could make it black just by taking the lightness all the way down, make it white by turning it. Obviously, I'm over exaggerating it here. And when you use the other adjustments, you can keep the shadows in there. And but I'm not going to get too far into that because I just wanted to show that we can match these colors perfectly. And so hopefully that was useful. And if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we're going to pass it over to Andrew.
Okay, we have one question from Den. He was saying that he faces an issue when he opens an image file. It shows a cryptic dialog box with 3 options telling him that the color profile of the image does not match the current setting, and he gets 3 radio options, which one to pick from. So
Okay, so when you're opening that, you're going to get the option to. You're going to see 3 options. I'm going to say you get assign profile, convert to profile, or don't color manage. So what you want to be doing is if you have an untagged image and you're going to use that as the base image to work off, you could choose to assign a profile to that. If you already have a base image that you're working off when you're combining them, or if you're just working on an individual image, convert to profile won't shift the colors visually as much. So if this is, I want to keep it pretty much how it is, choose convert to profile, choose, what profile, what color space. Adobe RGB is probably the most common if you're doing print. sRGB if you're working in digital and you don't need a big color depth. Or some people might be working with ProPhoto. It's personal. Most people, I would say, would start with ProPhoto or Adobe RGB because those have the bigger gamut, means they contain more colors. You can do your adjustments, save out that master file, and then when you choose save for web, to save the JPEG, then you can drop it down to the sRGB as your output file. So if you don't want to shift your colors too much, choose convert to profile. You saw what happened if you choose don't color manage. Remember that first example, and then you start combining images and the colors shift. You don't want to do that. So just choose what you want to work in and then adjust all of those. And I would say the same thing in Lightroom. You can set Lightroom to ProPhoto or to Adobe RGB. A lot of cameras have the ability to set that. Choose your workflow, set all your devices to that color space, and then just try and stick to that color space as much as possible.
got you. Thank you, Colin. I hope then your question has been answered. If you have any additional question, you can let us know and we can move forward to Andrew.
Right. So I think I need to stop sharing. All right. So you, Andrew.
Okay. So if I go to share, it'll share. So, and then desktop 1. Okay. So you're seeing my Lightroom, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So even though I'm in Lightroom, I wanted to go over something that people kind of ask me all the time. And so if I go to my Photos app, so if you're taking photos with your iPhone and you have it synchronized with your Photos app on your desktop computer, what people always want to know is how to get them into Lightroom. And one thing that I find is very helpful and very easy is you can create like a watched folder, basically an auto import folder. And so here I am in the Photos app, and then over here you can see a new Photos to auto import. So it's just a folder I made. So if I go over and I grab the series and I just drag that stack into that folder, you'll see that it's listed, and then quickly they will basically disappear because they will be imported into Lightroom. So yeah, so there they are. And so when I go to Lightroom, you'll see the new imports, building standard preview. And yes, it goes into a newest imports folder inside my new imports. And so that's very easy. It's just file, and then you choose auto import, and then you go to Of course, you want to enable auto import, but then you would go to auto import settings, and that's where you would create a watched folder, as you can see at the top. So in my case, it's on the desktop, simply new photos to auto import. You could call it just auto import to Lightroom, whatever feels right for you. And then you create a subfolder. So it'll create a new grouping. So newest imports, keep it similar to the original name. And then you can have the file naming. I would not put develop settings when I do the import metadata. If you had created like a copyright of your name, you could do that. And then keywords, I would not put keywords in because you're doing a different theme that you're importing each time. So, and then you would just hit OK. You would be creating this folder that's like a watched folder on your desktop. And then from now on, whenever you take a series of photos on your iPhone and you want to import them, you just go to your desktop, open up your Photos app, and then drag them into that watched folder. So yeah, and then let's see. So then I wanted to import from, let's see if I find it here. BenQ live event. Let me see the name of it. Yeah. Let's see if I go to desktop though. BenQ. Too many folders. Okay. So
yeah, you have a lot.
Yeah. So close the art and photos. Just go to Microsoft. So in general, though, that's, I always think of it like anytime you can't find something, it's a good way to segue into showing how you can do it easier. So when you have all that, this is my external with all the different folders and different themes. If I just go here, then I can go directly to say desktop, and then I can find the BenQ, and then the BenQ live events. I can't seem to be finding the one I'm trying to get to. I think it's under live events itself. Where is it? There it is. So live events. These are previous live events I've done. Okay. And then in this case, there's so much going on that I'm just going to get out of here. And then another way that you can bring something in if you can't seem to find it. I know I have it right here in this folder. If I just drag it over to my Lightroom, then it pops into the import dialog. So I know it's importing from my Macintosh hard drive. And then one thing that I always like to make clear for people, it seems when I was tutoring Photoshop years ago, I was tutoring compositing, color correction, tonal correction. And then it seems whenever I tutor Lightroom, I'm like a Lightroom detective. So in this case, I wanted to clarify that when you import, think of it as the from section. So it's from, and then the middle section is how, and then to. So if it's coming from like your hard drive, you would just, if you wanted to move it to your catalog, you could add it. So it adds to the photo of the catalog without moving them, and therefore it'll stay on your desktop. If you move it, then you can move it to a new location. And then over here, you would choose other destination. And then that's where I could go to my external drive. Yep. So I could go to my external drive, and I could just choose that as an example, and then it'll go to that. If I'm importing from a card reader, you'll have the options of copy to photos to a new location, and add catalog, or copy as DNG. If you're shooting in RAW, I prefer to copy as DNG. I've seen a few of the Adobe evangelists like Terry White recommend copy as DNG, which I'm a fan of, because what happens is with the CR3 in this case, or a RAW file, you always have a sidecar XMP file that piggybacks on to your raw file. Whereas if you copy as DNG, the sidecar metadata file is embedded into the DNG. And then you would think that the DNG might be larger, but in fact, it's an even smaller file size than the raw with the metadata. So here's just one photo and then copying. So it's going to Art Photos Docs, and then it always defaults to don't import suspected duplicates. So Lightroom's intelligent, making sure you're not importing that same photo as you had previously. You can rename your files as you're bringing it in. And then I just tend to keywords, put in the year, and it defaults, since I've done it before, to 2025, comma, space, and then I might just put in, what it is, landscape or something. And then just do a simple import. You can see the progress bar top left comes in. Yep, converted to DNG. And then when I double click it, I have brought down my menus just to what I focus on. So library, develop, and slideshow. If I go here to show all, then you can see all of them. Otherwise, you can turn them off. So I can say, I don't work on books too often in Lightroom, so I can turn that off. I can turn off slideshow if I'm not focusing on that. And then I'm not focusing on where my photos are on a map. So as you can see here, library, develop, print, web. And so I just switch over to develop. And here's my image. And you do have on the side, when you hover over, a list of, say, presets, but I like it to auto collapse, gives me more screen real estate, and I have the neutral gray background to look at, to see colors the way they should be seen. And so I've moved these around, the different panels. And so I start with lens correction. And as you can see here, it also tells you what the lens profile is. And then go to transform. And then with this image, as you can see, it's a bit slanted. So you can either click on level or auto. And auto and level seems to do the best. If you start doing the vertical and full, you can get more distortion, but auto does a pretty good job. And then if you still needed to rotate your image to have a perfect horizon line, you'll notice that with the rotate slider here, there is a constrained crop. So when you rotate, I'll just do an extreme, but it's still not really showing it. But if you rotate to a degree and then you see white on the edge, the constrained crop will crop it in and get rid of that, so you don't have that in your image. Okay, so something like this. Yep. And then I just go down to the basic slider. And then with the basic panel, I have the eyedropper. So there is the different profiles. So depending if it's a raw file, you do get a whole bunch of the Adobe different ones. So I might even try Adobe Landscape, which is fine, a little bit of a tweak. But I'm also a fan of the eyedropper, where I would go to a neutral gray, maybe on this building. And then when I click on that, that kind of gets rid of the overly blue cast to it. And then of course you can move these sliders to move the temperature more towards cool or warm. And then I just go directly into the tone. So open up the exposure a bit, and it does move pretty fast. So just subtlety is the name of the game. Of course, if you overdo it, you can double click the tab and it goes back to the default of 0. But 20% there to start with, a little bit of contrast. And I might go back and open up the exposure a little bit more. And then if you felt that the highlights are being blown out in the clouds and the sky, I can just move them negative. And then you can see more of the beautiful detail coming out in the clouds. Then shadows, did you want to open up some of the shadows? So you can move that to the right, so you can see a little bit more detail in this kind of boat engine. And I always tend to move the whites a little to the right for a nice contrast. Okay. And then under presence, you have texture, clarity, dehaze. With an image like this, you might want to try the dehaze, where you move that a little to the right. Just be aware that as you move it, even subtle movements, here it's just plus 15. It's pretty good with clouds, but a little bit more, and it starts shifting colors. So you want to be pretty sensitive to the sliders. And then when it comes to vibrance and saturation, I tend to favor vibrance. So it takes the kind of muted or desaturated colors and gives some saturation, whereas saturation, I'll just show you, kind of is heavy-handed and oversaturates everything pretty quickly. So I'll just move the vibrance a little bit. And then one thing I really like about Lightroom is when you're working in the develop module, simply pressing the Y key, you get a nice before and after. So you can see on the left how dark it was, and on the right, it's coming to life already. The colors are popping out nicely. So just simple sliders. And that's one thing I've always liked about Lightroom is you get some very advanced results with very simple moves of the sliders in Lightroom. And then under detail, that is where you can sharpen your image. And one trick that a lot of people don't tend to know is when you move the amount of sharpening to a certain degree, you don't really see it. But if you go down to the masking slider and you hold the Option key on a Mac, I guess Alt on a PC, when you move the masking slider, it starts off as white. So that's showing you that everything is being sharpened. And then as you move that slider to the right, what is black is being protected. It's usually the smoother areas, such as the sky. And so things that have a lot more detail, you'll see stays white. So the detailed areas get sharpened while the smoother areas are preserved. And that's just holding the Option key while moving the masking slider to the right. And so yeah, so hit the Y key, see that before and after. And then of course, if you get to a point where you feel that the sliders didn't really give you the push that you wanted with your image, you have the tone curve section where you can go in and bump up midtones and the highlights a bit like that. Yep. Right. Color mixture, color mixer has the hue, saturation, luminance. So hue is, I consider, like the quality of color. So as you can see here in the sliders, if it's red that you're trying to change, going towards the left is more kind of like a solid red, whereas as you go to the right, it's becoming more of an orange and towards a yellow. And I tend to not utilize the hue as much as saturation. And one thing that I'm a big fan of in Lightroom, which I know they have in Adobe Camera Raw as well, same processing engine, is this target adjustment tool. So if you choose this little symbol here, this little circle, and you're in the saturation slider, if you go over to, say, this yellow area, and I click, and as I pull up, you'll notice the slider in the panel, color mixer panel, goes up. And sometimes when you go to a color, such as this one, you might think that it's just red that you want to add to the saturation. But as you're clicking and pulling up, the target adjustment tool reads color more than your eye and realizes that it contains red and orange. So you'll see with a simple adjustment with the target adjustment tool, you can add +4 of red and +7 of orange. So yeah, target adjustment tool, big fan of. Any questions, Asha?
Yes, we have one question. Joe wants to know that he does not find an easy way to find pictures or photos that you have selected from your chosen folder from desktop. So does that show up only in Apple, or is it available onto Windows too?
Yeah, I mean, I am on a Mac. but I think you obviously can create a auto import folder in Lightroom. So it's both for Mac and PC. Um, Colin, you also work on a PC for accessing. There's not like a like if you were to take photos and then you synchronize it to a Photos app on your PC desktop. What what is that like Picture Viewer or what is the name of that app?
Honestly, I don't use Windows that much, and I don't manage
Okay,
my photos in there, so I'm not the guy to ask for Windows
okay.
stuff.
So we're both kind of Mac fanboys, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I could get back in touch with you about the steps to set it up for a PC, but it is the same process where you would start off with File, Auto Import, and then Auto Import Settings, and then you would create a watch folder on your desktop, and it should work. The only difference is that you would be dragging the photos from the app that you use on a Windows system. Yeah. Other questions?
Yeah. Den wanted to ask again where we were mentioning about the Photoshop, that is there a global setting where he does not have to, do it again and again, the three option dialog every time he opens an image in Photoshop?
Oh, yeah, I can get that. Yes, there's a setting. Do you want me to show it?
Yeah.
Sure, you can switch over. I'm pretty much
And I can give
done
it
with
back to you
Lightroom.
whenever you want. But yeah, I
Do I
can.
need to
I
uncheck?
think I can just hit on share. Do you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a setting. There's a global setting here. If you go under Edit, and when you see the two here, if you go up to Color Settings, this is where you choose your defaults, and you can choose. There's some here that are just presets. But generally speaking, for your RGB, you just choose what you want to use here. And so I'm going to use Adobe RGB. Some people might use P3, some people might use, Pro Photo or sRGB. So that's the main three is this one, and this
Okay.
one. I work in Adobe RGB, and CMYK is another thing for printing. I do actually do some print work from time to time. That's not your desktop printer. That's working with a commercial printing press, which is CMYK, different thing altogether. And then the mismatches here, this is where this is just basically telling you, hey, you can suppress the warnings. So if you turn all these on, you're going to get every warning. If you turn those warnings off, you're not. And you can also tell it what to do. So when you do an RGB, you can automatically have it converted to the working RGB, which is Adobe RGB.
Andrew,
So
your
you can
screen is
set
not
all this up right
sharing.
here. Sorry?
Uh,
Colin's screen is not sharing, I think.
Oh, you don't see my screen?
I see your screen, but I think the other participants aren't
Oh, Andrew,
able
can you
to.
stop sharing yours if you are?
there we go.
Okay. Does
Okay,
that
so
make
can
it better?
everybody see mine? I'll go back and I'll show again. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah, I thought he was
Can you see my
sharing a
screen now,
while
Dan?
ago.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
they can see
great.
it now.
Okay. So where we go under the edit, if you remember, I was saying, hey, assign and convert profiles here. Just go up to, you'll see color settings. And then under the color settings, you can choose your Adobe RGB. And in this case, whatever you want, your RGB, ProPhoto, sRGB. I'm using Adobe RGB. And then this is where you get the warnings. You get that, you're going to get all the warnings, turn it off, you'll suppress those warnings. You can also suppress, just means you're not going to see them. And you can also tell it to do things. So you've got options. So under RGB, so when you have an image, you can say off, which is not what you want to do because you're not going to get any warnings, but your colors are not going to be accurate. So you can preserve embedded means whatever you open, it's going to stay whatever it is. It's not going to change your document, which is what I like. I don't like things to automatically change. But if you want it to be a simple workflow, you could convert to working RGB, which means when you open an image, an RGB is automatically now going to convert to Adobe RGB. And that won't take effect until you save it. And once you save that, whatever it was is going to be replaced with Adobe RGB. So you can automate it, or you can, just keep things manual. But this is under the color settings. And this is how I set mine up here. Yeah, anytime. Best profile for printing is probably Adobe RGB because
Great.
most printers are shooting for that. And also, if you have an SW monitor, there's different monitors within the BenQ monitors. The SW are the ones that are mostly Adobe RGB. They're usually like 99%, 98 to 100% Adobe RGB. So they're going to be very good for that color space. The PD monitors are going to be more towards the sRGB, which is good for digital work.
There was also a question saying, what is the dynamic range of your printer compared to the display of your BenQ monitor photography? Oh.
That's a very good question. The dynamic range, I'm used to dynamic range in a sense of, like working with photos, like maybe I'm working with HDR or different things like that. So, like the monitor itself, this is if I'm in HDR mode, which you can output for now. I'm obviously not going to print it in that. Is going to be different. It's going to be very different on print because print you're dealing with pigment, so you're working with a additive. I believe it's so there's additive and subtractive color. Subtractive color subtract all the colors to get white, which would be pigments, which would be like a printer. Additive add all the colors together to make white, which would be light, which is what your monitor is. So as far as like the actual dynamic range, if you're working in, RGB, sorry, if you're working in the HDR mode, which is a setting in your settings here, you're going to have more. So let's go to the display here, and you'll see there's an option here, high dynamic range. If I turn that on, I'll be working in an HDR space. I will increase it. And generally speaking, with workable HDR, you're working with recovering information in the highlights when we're working like this. So the actual dynamic range is going to depend. Every monitor, you're going to have to look at its specs. You're going to have to look at the specs of the printer. But there are definitely differences. So that's why you do things like soft proofing. And even when you're printing from Photoshop, you can have an idea. So if you set up a proper profile, so say, for example, what really matters is like, say you're working on Epson, you download the profile for that paper. And then when you're in Photoshop and you go into the print window, you're going to get a representation of what it's going to look like on the printer. Because when you're dealing with light versus ink, there's colors that can be created with inks and pigments that can't be displayed on a monitor. Just think, for example, fluorescence, metallics. It's impossible to show that on a monitor, right? And then the same thing with the monitor is able, when you're working with light, you're able to display colors that are not going to be able to be printed. So that's why you use the profiles. The profiles take all those wild colors and contain them into a common area that you're going to be working with. And then, so then when you use that profile, it pushes everything into that profile. And that's what your soft proof or preview. I hopefully that answers your question, or hopefully that's why you were asking that question.
Okay, and for Andrew, there was a question that we previously had. He said the quick selection option that's above in the left side of the Lightroom, which does show up in, like, it doesn't show up in Windows, it just shows up in Mac thing. Is it something like that?
I've stopped sharing so you can share if you need to, Andrew.
Okay. Did you want to connect me, Asha?
Yes.
Okay. Or do I just hit share? Yeah, maybe that's it. Yep.
You can just share, yeah.
Okay. And okay, you see my Lightroom? Yeah.
I can see it. Can
Yeah.
other participants also see Andrew's screen? Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the question was again? Sounds like it was separate from the auto import question.
I think it was the same question. He just said that the quick selection section, which is on the top left of the Lightroom, which generally shows in the window, it doesn't show up in the windows. Is it a Mac thing? that he wanted to understand.
Quick selection.
Yes.
Quick selection. I'm not sure if a quick selection. You're talking about in develop.
Let me check. I think where you can import the photos. I will ask Joe again. Joe, can you put your question in the chat box so Andrew can answer you better? I think there's some setting thing that he thinks does not show up in Windows that was relevant to what.
I mean, the layout is the same. The menus are slightly different. So like, I would go to Lightroom Classic on a Mac for certain things where I believe you have to go to File on a Windows computer.
Okay,
But there shouldn't be any features that are missing as such.
got you. Okay, Joe says, is it where you went to import your first photo?
Okay.
I think it was on your desktop, Andrew.
Okay. So when I went to import, he's saying that there is what missing?
I think he says this does not show up on a Windows. Is it a Mac thing that this shows up?
No, that shows up on
It
Windows too.
it should
Yeah,
show up on Windows
exactly.
too.
Yeah, you should always have these
Oh, you know
options.
what it might be? He might not be using Lightroom Classic. Did you mention
Actually, good
Oh,
point. Good
Classic? He
point,
might be
Colin.
using
Yeah,
Lightroom.
got you.
that's a good point. Yeah,
It could be a different setting for that, right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Like,
Lightroom has a completely different input system.
Gotcha. Is there any other question that somebody wants to ask? Okay, let's wait for 2-3 minutes if somebody else has any question.
back to the room. Palette master.
How do you find a photo in Lightroom that's being tagged?
Okay. Go back to share again. Okay. So, in library, let's go to just, any. This is like from art opening, just anyone's. But if you notice up in the top, you have the library filter. So you see that you can choose by text or attribute, and that's where you can choose by flag or like ratings, those type of tags. So just by choosing criteria from the library filter, that's how you can find it. And one thing that I would recommend is if you are looking for specific photos that are tagged a certain way, just remember to always hit the none button at the top afterwards. People tend to get tripped up by staying stuck in that area and then go to a different folder and it's still kind of showing something else. So yeah, under library filter at the top, you can search by text, attribute, which is where you'll find like the flags or color tags or ratings. Is that good?
And Dan, he's asking about Palette Master working without having to need Rosetta, I believe. I don't know. I'm sure they're working on it, and I literally, that's engineers. That's a whole outside of my realm, and I would say outside of all of us three, we
Right.
wouldn't know that right now. But I'm sure they're frantically working on it.
We're working on it and we will reconsider your point and I will share it again so we can get it through quickly.
Right.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Thank you so much, guys. It was a lot of learning. I got to learn a lot of stuff. It was very new for me, so especially the changing of color from white to black and all that stuff. That's pretty interesting. And also the shadow thing, because I don't do it on a larger scale, but it's like a little bit editing, but I didn't knew that shadows can play such a big role into making it more realistic and into a seamless picture. So thank you so much. That was really nice. I really learned a lot in the session. And I hope everyone enjoyed and they had some good tips and tricks to learn from.
Great.
So we can end this session and thank you everyone
Thank
for
you, everybody.
joining. Thank you so much, Colin and Andrew, for your time and for
Thank you.
some
Thanks
good
for having
tips.
me.
Thank you.
And
Thanks a lot.
thanks everyone for showing up.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, everyone.